It would appear that we are in the middle of a gradual disclosure on the subject of UFOs. UFOs have typically been the subject of ridicule, and the government's public stance on the matter since the 1960s has been that UFOs do not exist. But since December of 2017, there has been an unprecedented amount of serious mainstream media coverage on UFOs, and an official government acknowledgement of their existence. This video is a quick recap of the major news stories regarding UFOs that have come out since December of 2017. This all began in December of 2017 when the Pentagon revealed the existence of a secretive program that studies UFOs called ATIP, originally proposed by U.S. Senator Harry Reid.
Tonight, CNN has learned the Pentagon had a secretive program to research UFOs like the one Fravor spotted. The project was called the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program, run by an official named Luis Elizondo.
I think this is a national security imperative. We have clear things that we do not understand how they work, operating in areas that we can't control.
A defense official tells CNN the program cost at least $22 million over 5 years before it was shut down in 2012. According to the New York Times and Politico, which first reported this story, tens of millions of dollars for the project were pushed through by former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid.
In this initial story, we met Luis Elizondo, who ran the Pentagon program, and he went on mainstream media to say that these craft are non-human.
Up front now, the former Pentagon military official who ran the covert government program up until this last November, Luis Elizondo. Luis, thank you so much for your time tonight. I mean, first, tell us what the purpose of the program was and why it was so secretive.
Sure. The purpose of the program, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, was really designed to do just that. From a national security perspective, identify those things that we see, whether we see them electro-optically, we see them with radar, we see them as eyewitness reports, through a myriad of different ways and avenues that we receive the information, and try to ascertain and determine if that information is a potential threat to national security, in a nutshell.
So what did you find?
Well, we found a lot. I think it's probably been a little bit mischaracterized in some of the social media you see and what people put out, because a lot of times when we don't have a lot of information, we tend to fill in those gaps with what we think is logical. And there's still, by the way, a lot we really don't know. I think what's important is that we have identified some very, very interesting anomalous type of aircraft, let's call them aircraft. Things that don't have any obvious flight surfaces, any obvious forms of propulsion, and maneuvering in ways that include extreme maneuverability beyond, I would submit, the healthy G-forces of a human or anything biological, hypersonic velocities, low observability, positive lift, again, seemingly in defying the laws of aerodynamics. So. People
so do you
are talking,
think, I mean, I know, but do you believe, when you get that Navy pilot saying what he said, do you think that that was, a UFO? Obviously, I don't have any other word to use, or that or something else?
Sure, that's a great question. Keeping in mind, it's not just the pilot's testimony on an observation. Sure, when someone comes to you who's in charge of a multi-million-dollar weapon platform, who maintains a top-secret security clearance, who is paid and trusted by this country to go fight wars, and to fly over cities with live munitions. And by the way, they're trained observers with millions of dollars invested in their training.
Yep.
I would submit to you it's pretty compelling, but on top of that, it's not just the eyewitness testimony. It is actual electro-optical data and radar returns. It's also people like radar operators and air traffic controllers. So I think the discussion should be maybe a little bit broader than that. I think people are focusing just on 2 videos coming from a set of F-18s when really it's a lot more than that. I ran this program. I was fundamentally looking at, my colleagues looking at 2 things.
Yeah.
What is it and how does it work? We have deliberately stayed away from going down the rabbit hole of who's behind the wheel and what are their intentions.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people have a lot of feelings towards that and are very emotional about that. And what I wanted to do is to allow the data to speak for itself and then use that data to inform leadership, senior DoD leadership, about the potential threat that these type of technologies pose to national security, especially over any type of controlled airspace that we might have. So I'm not trying to be evasive in any way or vague with your answer, but
yeah. Well,
I think there's a lot of possibilities.
Look, and I know you think it's important. I know you think that the government didn't take the threat seriously enough. So let me just ask you point blank the question. Do you believe that life from somewhere else, while you ran this program, came here, visited, observed?
I will tell you unequivocally that through the observation, scientific methodologies that were applied to look at this phenomena, that these aircraft, we'll call them aircraft, are displaying characteristics that are not currently within the U.S. inventory nor in any foreign inventory that we are aware of.
So I know you're being clear, but I mean, the answer is yes.
I can't speak on behalf of the government. Obviously, I'm not in the U.S. government anymore. My personal belief is that there is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone, whatever that means.
For the first time in history, the Pentagon declassified 2 recordings of UFO encounters captured by Navy fighter pilots for public consumption. The first UFO encounter is from an encounter that the Nimitz Carrier Strike Group had off the coast of Baja California in 2004. The second declassified video shows a UFO encounter had by the USS Theodore Roosevelt nuclear aircraft carrier off the Florida coast in 2015.
Dude, that is a fucking drone, bro. There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude. That's not our LNS though, is it? It's not. That is LNS, dude. Well, if there's like... Look at that thing! It's rotating.
Commander David Fravor was one of the Navy fighter pilots from the 2004 Nimitz UFO encounter, and he went on mainstream media and discussed the event.
UFOs have been the stuff of conspiracy theorists for decades, often mocked for talking about it, but maybe they shouldn't be mocked. Commander David Fravor spent 18 years as a naval aviator, a pilot. In 2004, he had an unforgettable encounter with an aircraft he said was defying the laws of physics. Former Commander Fravor joins us tonight. Thanks a lot for coming on tonight. Tell us what you saw.
Well, we had launched on a routine training mission. When we joined up, we were told that the event was going to be canceled and that we have real-world tasking, and we were sent out to the west. Now, take in mind that this has taken place about 100 miles southwest of San Diego, between San Diego and Ensenada, Mexico,
Yep.
On a clear, perfect day, blue waters. We get out to the spot where they tell us it's at. We start looking around, and both airplanes see a disturbance in the water and a white 40-foot long tic-tac shaped object just hovering above the water, going forward, back, left, right. There's no rotor wash, there's no wings, nothing. So as we drive around in a clockwise flow, we get to about the 9 o'clock position, and I said, well, I'm going to go down and check it out, and the other jet is going to stay high. So as we go down, when we get to the 12 o'clock position, it starts to mirror us. So it's in a clockwise flow, and it's on the opposite side of the circle from us. And we continue this. It's in a climb, we're in a descent, we're getting a great look at it. This whole thing takes about probably up to 5 minutes from the time we show up. I get over to the 8 o'clock position, it's at about the 2 o'clock position, and I decide I'm going to go and see what it is, and it's about 2,000 feet below me. And I cut across the circle, and as I get within about a half mile of it, it rapidly accelerates to the south in about 2 seconds and disappears.
What would you estimate the speed?
Oh, well above supersonic. It like a bullet out of a gun, it took off.
So from what you know about aerodynamics, mechanics, physics, should this be possible, what you saw?
Not with the technology that we have today. Not at all.
Even now, even 13 years later, Is there anything that you know of capable of this kind of behavior?
No, there's nothing I know of. I mean, when we saw the video with the IR, it has no exhaust, no discernible things of anything form of propulsion. And this thing came from a dead hover over the water, just kind of moving around, to a climb up to about 12,000 feet to rapidly accelerating away in a climb, and in less than 2 seconds it was gone. And you figure you're talking 50 miles of visibility, and you can easily see an object that size easily out to 10 miles, and it just disappeared in seconds.
Bottom line, what do you think this was?
I believe, as do the other folks that were on the flight when we visually saw it, that it was something not from this world.
When presumably you expressed that belief to your superiors, what did they say?
Actually, we caught a lot of grief getting back to the boat, and it got passed off as an event that no one could explain. Now, keep in mind, they had been tracking these for 2 weeks prior to us seeing it, and this was the first time that manned airplanes had been airborne when the objects appeared.
This feels like a really big story to me. It's not exactly clear why Vladimir Putin's more interesting than this. I think this seems like a big deal. And Commander, I appreciate your taking the time to talk to us about it. You seem sober and believable, and I appreciate it.
Why, thank you very much, Tucker.
Thanks.
In March of 2018, a third video was released of a UFO encounter had by Navy fighter pilots off the east coast of Virginia in 2015.
Echo 61 Tango, Roger, oh, got it! Woohoo! Roger, there's troubleshooting as soon as I get did you box moving target? No, I took an auto track. Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, dude. Wow, look at it fly!
One of the last things the late Senator John McCain of Arizona did before dying was request the release of the studies that the Pentagon UFO program conducted, and this list was released for public consumption in January of 2019.
Back in 2007, Reid and a few Senate colleagues sponsored a secret Pentagon program that investigated mystery aircraft and related phenomenon. The program was based right here in southern Nevada, but that effort ended 6 years ago, and really very little from that study has been made public.
Now the senator not only hopes the X-Files get released, but thinks there should be a renewed effort to get to the bottom of things.
Senator Reid sat down with the I-Team's George Knapp for this update.
Reid says he has not personally read all of the reports and papers produced by the ALSAP study, but he saw a lot of it. He assigned 2 senior staff members to look at pretty much all of it. The Pentagon has only confirmed the existence of 38 unclassified scientific papers produced by the study. 5 of those have been made public so far. But what else is in the files? Reid previously confirmed the study investigated reports of UFO activity over American nuclear missile bases. He also says part of the focus was on a mysterious ranch in northeastern Utah, a property once owned by businessman Robert Bigelow. The I-Team has learned that Bigelow's UFO study employed more than 50 people at one point. One of the known 38 papers looked into the harmful health consequences for persons who've had close encounters. The paper has not been made public, but the chief scientist in the program spoke about it last year in Las Vegas.
As part of this program, we looked at some cases that were really good from Brazil, 77, 78. It was like close encounters of the third kind. 1,000 pages of documents, all done by the Brazilian Air Force investigative team. 500 photographs, 15 hours of motion film, a lot of medical injuries when people encountered these.
A list to the link of all the studies that the Pentagon UFO program conducted is in the description, and I recommend that everyone reads them for themselves. In April of 2019, there were Senate hearings on the creation of the new Space Force branch of the U.S. military. Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut's statements during this hearing are suspicious.
The most important facts for us and the American people to understand are the facts that haven't been said today. And the reason why they haven't been said is that they are largely classified. And the reason that's important is that the American people have no idea really no idea about the immensity of the threat in space. And I've made this comment in a classified setting, that I wish the American people could be present in this room, because our adversaries know what they are doing. We know what they are doing. They know, we know what they are doing. But the American people have no idea.
In May of 2019, the U.S. Navy publicly updated the procedures for which fighter pilots are to report their UFO encounters. This is important because many pilots are afraid to discuss their UFO encounters out of fear of ridicule.
The U.S. Navy is preparing new guidelines for pilots on how to report sightings of UFOs. The military reports there have been strange sightings of unauthorized or unidentified aircraft over its airspace in recent years, though no confirmed encounters with anybody from some other place. But the Navy is updating its process so that investigators can look into each individual report.
Also in May of 2019, it was revealed on mainstream media that the U.S. government stores metal alloys retrieved from crashed UFOs.
So let me ask you one last question. Do you believe, based on your decade of serving in the U.S. government on this question, that the U.S. government has in its possession any material from one of these aircrafts?
I do, yes.
You think the U.S. government has debris from a UFO in its possession right now?
Unfortunately, Tucker, I really have to be careful of my NDA. I really can't go into a lot of more detail in that.
Okay.
But simply put, yes.
In June of 2019, the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence received classified briefings from the Navy on the reality of the UFO phenomena.
Is something really out there? 3 more U.S. senators received a classified briefing about UFOs at the Pentagon, or in current lingo, unidentified aerial phenomena. You may have heard that pilots and other military personnel have been reporting these kinds of sightings for years. A couple weeks ago, the Department of Defense even released footage shot by a Navy Super Hornet pilot. But you may not have known that back in 2007, Congress directed the Pentagon to set up a $22 million search for the truth. And Tom Foreman is with me more on the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program. So Tom, talk to me about these senators getting the classified briefings on UFOs.
Yeah, well, here's the interesting thing. It's easy to laugh at this, easy to think it's silly or it's just a bunch of hokum out there. But Senator Mark Warner, who is the vice chair of the Intelligence Committee, said, look, I think it's important. He told us just this afternoon, I think it's important that the military is taking this more seriously now than they did in the past. So what are they taking seriously? Those videos you were talking about relate to a couple of different sightings we're talking about. In 2004, there was one called the Tic Tac sighting. They called it that because they said it looked like a Tic Tac flying out there very close to the water on the West Coast. And then more recently, there were some out on the East Coast that people were talking about, 2014, 2015, where these pilots were describing seeing these things up to 30,000 feet in the air, flying at extraordinary speeds, hypersonic, well over the speed of sound, changing direction in the most astonishing ways, and seemingly defying the laws of physics. Listen to what one of these pilots had to say.
No distinct wings, no distinct tail, no distinct exhaust. It seemed like they were aware of our presence because they would actively move around us.
So that's what has everyone excited here. These reports, the release of these videos.
Let's watch Senator Mark Warner's response and body language immediately following his briefing on UFOs.
Should we be about the briefing that you received on UFOs? Is that a concern that for pilots? Is there anything you can mention to us about that?
Well, I think some of the press reports are accurate. I think people are taking this issue much more seriously, and I'm not going to get into any of the contents of the briefing. It was a classified briefing, but what I think one of the key takeaways I'd have is that the military and others are taking this issue seriously, which I think in previous generations may not have been the case.
In late June and early July of 2019, President Donald Trump commented on UFOs.
All the information in the world, all the mysteries out there. And I was just struck in the last couple of weeks, we're reading more and more reports of Navy pilots seeing lots and lots of UFOs. Have you been briefed on that? What do you make of it?
I have. I think it's probably. I want them to think whatever they think. They do say. I mean, I've seen, and I've read, and I've heard, and I did have one very brief meeting on it. But people are saying they're seeing UFOs. Do I believe it? Not particularly.
Do you think you'd know if there were evidence of extraterrestrials?
Well, I think our great pilots would know. And some of them really see things that are a little bit different than in the past. So we're going to see. But we'll watch it. You'll be the first to know.
You gave an interview the other day in which you said you've been briefed on unidentified flying objects. Are they real?
Well, I don't want to really get into it too much, but personally, I tend to doubt it. I mean, you have people that swear by it, right? And pilots have come in and they said, and these are pilots that are not pilots that are into that particular world, but we have had people saying that they've seen things. I'm not a believer, but, you know, I guess anything's possible.
We spoke to a government official recently who said the U.S. government had wreckage from a UFO in a facility on an Air Force base. Are you familiar with that?
I haven't heard that, no. I haven't heard that. It has not been within government, has not been a big thing, but I've seen it. I've seen it on your show, but I've seen it. I don't assume it's correct, but, you know, I have an open mind, Tucker.
No, you do, Mr. President. Thank you for that.
Nowadays, you can believe anything, right?
Trump's responses regarding the UFO phenomena are interesting. At no point does he deny UFOs, and he says he is open to the idea. There are plenty of reasons why he might answer this way. Regardless, the fact that a sitting U.S. president is seriously discussing UFOs on mainstream media cannot be understated. It is also important to remember that prior to the disclosure of the Pentagon UFO program, the U.S. government's official stance on UFOs was that they do not exist and they do not study them. Each one of these aforementioned news stories is major in regards to UFOs and disclosure, and the fact that they are happening so close in proximity to each other after 70 years of denial by the U.S. government is telling of some sort of shift in the way the government views the subject. It is impossible to know where this is all leading. We will just have to wait and see.